Today, we welcome to Global Citizenship Education interview series, Professor Lynette Shultz. Professor Lynette Shultz is the director of the Center for Global Citizenship Education and Research at the University of Alberta in Canada. Thank you very much for joining this interview series. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, so let me ask you a straightforward question. What is global citizenship and what is global citizenship education, in your opinion?
such a small question to get us started. So global citizenship to me is, well, I'll say what it's not. It's not a kind of super citizenship that exists for a global elite, right? That's not what global citizenship is really about. And I've been studying this for over 20 years and watching how it works. And so at this point, I think I can say that global citizenship is really, in many ways, it's an ethical platform, right? From which people view themselves in the world. They view what's going on in the world beyond their own location. So it's not disconnected from what's local or what's personal, what's cultural, etc. But it in fact extends that. So it gives people the ability to see and understand the world. The planet is what I usually say.
Right. Okay, and this ties in a way to my second question to you, Lynette. What knowledge and values are students expected to acquire through global citizenship education, in your opinion?
Oh, okay. Well, I like this question because, I've been teaching an online interdisciplinary global citizenship course for about 8 years now. And so I get to design and redesign over that time and think about what it is that students need. And so I've come to understand that what students need to understand at this point in time is how to get past the neoliberal individualism that they have been immersed in. The students that we have right now in university have lived their full life fully under neoliberalism, where they've been taught competition and individualism and economic globalization as the primary concern of their lives. They're trained to get a job. So in many ways, global citizenship provides a way, and global citizenship education provides a time where students can pause and learn something that resists that. Learn that they in fact are on a planet with other species and other humans who live differently. We have in fact a shared planet that we have. So in lots of ways, it builds on global citizenship, really supports the threads of global social justice. It supports those understandings that help us really understand how is it that we live together on a shared planet.
Right. Very interesting. So you can see sort of a mix of responsibility and values connected to social justice, sustainability. All of this, in your opinion, belongs to notion of global citizenship education.
Yeah. And, I think that's an interesting, if we look at the trajectory of global citizenship over 20 years, it came out of the development education sector where there were major shifts in thinking about the relationships between North and South, between poor and rich and so on. And also neoliberalism was becoming much more embedded within everyday life. So global citizenship started to be used as it's almost an umbrella term, and it brought together development education. So how do we learn about the world and poverty? It
Right.
brought together some of the global anti-racism work. It brought together early environmental education and absolutely peace education.
Right.
And so it became a turn or a place that those things were gathered together.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I think this also connects to a question I wanted to ask you regarding the work that you are doing on global citizenship education, particularly your experience as a director of the Center for Global Citizenship Education and Research at the University of Alberta. So how your approach to global citizenship connects with the work you're doing at the research center?
So the work at the center has, it's been around again for just a bit over a decade. And so, you know, we have started out and maintained a very critical approach to global citizenship. And really early work was looking at global citizenship as a counter-colonial project.
Right.
That it was working not just anti-colonial, but it was work counter to the global colonial structures that have been that are still in place, and the legacies of colonialism that are experienced around the world. And so that has always been kind of the foundation of the work of the center. Of course, like any center, we have, you know, there are different projects funded by different agencies. And so we do work with schools, a lot of work with schools. We've designed a global classroom, a process of connecting high school students around the world
Right.
to do research on global citizenship. And, you know, but whatever project it is, whatever research we're doing, we come to it with this understanding that what we do works against colonialism, whether it's neo-colonialism of economic globalization or the social, cultural, and economic legacies of European colonialism, the knowledge colonialism that is also a legacy. So so that's all of our projects. So we've published several books, we hold conferences, we bring together, it's really a gathering place where we can have these kinds of discussions and really think deeply and work deeply to understand how is it that we need to live on this planet together? How do we help students see the structures that are in place, how those structures work, how to dismantle them, to give, you know, the theoretical strength and the knowledge that students need to be able to read the world, as Paulo Freire said, in a deep way, and see themselves in that world. So that's the work that we do. And you know, we're in an interesting time, you know, again, I say I'm really have mapped this idea for a long time. In North America, I'm situated in Canada, in the western part of Canada, and at the University of Alberta. And like other places in Europe and North America, we see a certain rise of the right, the idea of libertarianism, the pull of populism. It is a challenging time to be doing work that really resists that. And so in many ways, you know, when I teach students, they do come and say, you know, that they really feel an urgent need to understand the world, and they're not necessarily getting that in other places. And they feel very deeply these pulls, confusing politics that are around them. And so again, in the teaching and the research that we do, we're looking at that.
Right, right. This is very interesting. I just wanted to ask you, what is a recent or less recent project that was particularly important to you? Of course, they're all important, but anything you like to share with our viewers that really, in your opinion and based on your experiences, was important in terms of transformational outcomes, or anything that really impacted in a way that you believe is valuable the field? Talking about projects or publications or events that you feel you want to share with our viewers.
Well, let's see. I think the most exciting project that we've just finished and we're just starting to write it up now was a project for the last year and a half, where we brought together high school students in 22 countries and spend 8 months researching about energy futures. And really what that's about is the climate crisis, but thinking about energy and energy use. And it was a very exciting project where we worked with the teachers and the students. It was inquiry based, so students would do research, bring it, and we'd hold global town halls where students were presenting their research. And so the thing that was really exciting about it was, well, one, that just the research that these students were able to conduct and present in really brilliant ways. So their understanding of what was going on in their local communities, they're coming together and sharing this to create a global vision.
Right.
Their ability to analyze and bring to this multi-scalar analysis that they were demonstrating was very exciting. They also, we worked very hard at, making sure everybody had the technology they needed, that there was some balance of traditional kinds of power relations between locations. There was really exciting conversations among the students themselves about how they could make this an equitable experience. So we had, students in Peru collaborating with students in Nigeria and in Poland, working together to make a presentation that was spectacular, making videos, and they would, run up to an issue of electricity being weak in one area, and they'd figure out a way to solve that problem together in a way that was not, I just saw so much dignity and so much kindness and deep relations being developed among those students. One of our first sessions where we brought students together, it was actually to talk about 5 years ago to have students talk about global citizenship. And I actually used the paper they wrote in my university class. This process that we've designed is really helpful to get students connected. And we check in every once in a while with our original students, and 5 years later, they still talk to each other almost every day on WhatsApp and other technologies. So in many ways, it's watching global citizenship in action. And
Right.
I have great hope in what I see with youth right now.
Right.
I
That's
really am. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Indeed, I think the what you're mentioning is really a sense of, I mean, what I got is a sense of hope and trust in the potential of your students and youth in general, which is very encouraging. I think this ties with another question I wanted to ask you regarding the Transdisciplinary Academic Global Citizen Certificate that you are teaching and you are developing at the University of Alberta. It would be nice to hear some experiences related to this program.
Sure. Universities make it very difficult to do transdisciplinary work.
Right.
You can do small interdisciplinary things, but transdisciplinary, it's there are few mechanisms in universities that can manage that. So it took us a tremendous amount of meetings and assuring people that it was a solid and a credible project, and it has turned out really well. It's going now again. It will be, I think, about 9 years now that it's been in place, and it's it's growing. It's we teach. I teach often teach the required course that all students will take, and so it's a fabulous course with students from many different faculties at the University of Alberta. So the kind of, as a professor, it's challenging. It's my challenge is to bring students together where they can, bring the best of their own disciplinary knowledge into the class, and it's shared in a way that's helpful, and so it's an inquiry-based course as well.
What kind of courses are you teaching?
So the certificate is organized in this way. So there's one required course for all students who are getting the certificate, and it's an interdisciplinary course.
Right.
And within each faculty, we have worked with the deans, and there are several courses that fulfill the global citizenship requirements that the students can choose from. So every,
for example,
so in nursing, there is a global health related. There's community service learning in different faculties, so they work within the communities. There are some global project work, and in science classes, as science faculty, there are certainly lots of environmental and sustainability courses.
Right.
Nutrition. There's every faculty actually has courses that fit within the ideas of global citizenship. They actually address the objectives of the certificate.
This is very interesting.
And it was fascinating to work with the different faculties through that process to identify. We spent almost a year doing deliberations in faculties with professors and graduate students, sectional instructors to identify the places within their programs that had the shared objectives. So we have a mapping at the university, and we have an annual process of review. So the deans will help us by looking at those courses to see if they're still offered, if there's been changes. And so it's it's a very interesting project. And my experience with the students who do this, it's an embedded certificate within their degree, so it's not additional. So it's really interesting when I see them in the class, the interdisciplinary global citizenship class, to hear their experiences, and they're very committed to to working, you know, yeah, to make the world better, right? They're very committed to understanding what's going on. They really have longed for information that gives
Right.
them the ability to analyze what's going on in the world. You know, with the exception of the political science and sociology students, probably all the students have a gap in their education at you know, how to read and understand what's going on in the world. So yeah.
Right. Very, very interesting. Now, very fascinating hearing your experience with this transdisciplinary approach where you involved deans and professors across the university, even students. Is my understanding correct?
Yes.
That's very
Absolutely.
interesting. It's very, very fascinating. Okay, so this is an important discussion, and I want to add to this as well. And I'm certain that this is connected to the work you're doing on global citizenship, the notion of conviviality. So in your chapter in my edited book, Conversations on Global Citizenship Education, published in Routledge, you discussed the notion of conviviality in relation to GC. And I think this is a really fascinating notion. So can you explain how the notion of conviviality is connected to your line of work and GC?
Yeah. So you know, it comes from the idea of living with, right, living with others. And so again, it really the work of global citizenship and global citizenship education brings us into that needing to understand relations. And that is a big push against neoliberal individualism, right? And the structures that keep us apart and in competition and so on. And so it is conviviality helps us think about how is it we live together on a shared planet. It's the foundational idea for that. It requires us to think, to read the world through relations. And you know, if we look at as an ethical foundation of how to be in the world, it really does shift what we see and where we see the kinds of action, the responsibilities we have, the ways to act as a citizen, the ways to act as a human on this planet right now.
So how this connects with the notion of global citizenship? I mean, I understand there is a strong connection in terms of living in harmony with humans and non-humans. We kind of sometimes forget that we are also living with non-humans. So which I think is an important aspect as well to be included in our discussion on global citizenship. But I just wanted to understand a little bit more how you kind of operationalize the notion of conviviality within, for example, your teachings or research.
Right. You know, in many ways, if you take seriously the work on about the geopolitics of knowledge, the colonial project of conquering and of you know, extraction of knowledge, of resources, of treating all life in a hierarchy, right? If as you work over a long period of time, if you take those ideas seriously, then what you're left with is the understanding that we need to, in order to work against that, to be counter-colonial, to work against those kinds of structures and ways of organizing the world.
Right.
We see that the alternative really is not to focus on the liberal individual, but it's in fact to look at the relations among people, of people, groups of humans and non-humans, right? It is a counter-colonial place to work. And so really it is, it's where our work in the center has landed after doing,
Right.
working quite a long time, and seeing where are we with these ideas,
Right.
right?
Right.
If we sit with what has been done in research on global citizenship, and really, if you look at the field, it's all over the place, right?
That's
You know
right.
that as a person publishing in this area and studying.
Right.
In some ways, if you just looked at the vast difference in how people understand global citizenship, you can say it's diminished by that. But if again you relook at that and say, what is it? What are these different ideas of global citizenship trying to do? Right? What are people trying to do with the idea, and how does global citizenship work?
Right. Right. Right.
What
Right.
it really does is profoundly change where we look at in the world. Like, at what are how do we organize our thinking about the world? How do we read the world,
Right.
as
Right.
how do we see that? And so instead of looking at individuals, we are looking at relations.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree with you on this. Definitely an interesting connection there. I also want to ask you a challenging question, and uh, all the guests that joined this global citizenship interview series, in a way or another, were challenged on this. And the question is, how would you define global citizenship using three keywords? I'm confident that this will connect with the overall discussion we had today, with your work at the center, your teachings, your certificate on global citizenship, the program, the interdisciplinary approach. And so I was curious to know, how would you define global citizenship education using this tool, three keywords, as you wish?
Well, it's hard to reduce things down to 3 words.
Sure. Particularly with global citizenship.
I know people are doing okay. And I'll say I have the same difficulty when people want to reduce global citizenship education down to assessments and to outcomes.
Yeah.
Get into great trouble doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to say, okay, they're not just words, they're combinations.
Concepts. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, 3 concepts. 1, counter-colonial relations. It's number 1. 2, a shared planet, right? And so that's around peaceful coexistence. And the third is a radical acceptance of diversity and difference.
Radical acceptance. Okay, that's interesting. What do you mean by radical acceptance? That's very, very interesting.
Difference.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have a great history on this planet as humans, certainly in the last, 500 years, particularly I'm talking about, of when we see difference, we want to get rid of it, right? As we think, and again, it comes to that idea of hierarchies of being, and that have been, taught and reproduced over and over. Hierarchies of race, hierarchies of gender, hierarchies of economics, right? We have this way of organizing how we see the world. And so global citizenship requires it requires a radical way of thinking of difference that's outside that. That's again, the counter-colonial work that has to be done. And
Right.
so, I often refer to Donna Haraway's work, and a term she uses that I love is odkin. And while her work, it does a disservice to pull in one idea, because it's, her work is brilliant and deeper. But at this point, I just want to think about, what does it mean to have to engage as oddkin, as seeing our connection,
Right.
to what we would have thought of as other, right? An other species, but in fact, to see at again, a very radical way of interconnection. I'm not talking lightly interconnected, in a deep way, in a kinship kind of way, that
Right.
the connecting of life on the planet, and that, and I know that discussions of interconnection, especially around critical scholars, can cause people to roll their eyes a bit. But it's not meant to say that we don't look at the structures that exist and that have been created to produce a kind of social and economic arrangement.
Right.
It's very much ways to unsettle those structures, and to be able to imagine something that's different in order to understand, what are we working toward? What are we working for?
Right. Very interesting. I think we had a very, very interesting discussion today. Thank you, Lynette. And to conclude with our conversation, I'm curious to know, what are you working on recently? And if you wish, you might want to share some thoughts on your prospective projects, anything that you're particularly focusing on at this stage with our viewers. Really, you have total freedom.
Well, I'm looking at, again, what's emerging in the area of global citizenship, and I'm quite interested right now in work that's being done to bring intangible cultural heritage and global citizenship together.
Right.
To understand really how, again, it's, to look at this link between local and global at a deep way. And I think that I'm quite interested in that. And so I'm working on a research project in that area. Also to look at, again, I continue to do mapping of the ideas of global citizenship, because in many ways, I think that the researchers working on global citizenship and the work that gets produced really, in some ways, heralds much of the political changes that are emerging as well.
Right.
So
right.
I think, so I continue to do that mapping at this point.
Wonderful.
I haven't got a big book project at the moment, but stay tuned. I might make that announcement in a couple of months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we welcome you here anytime on our interview series. Okay, thank you so much, Lynette. It was a pleasure discussing with you, and really, really thank you. Your work is precious.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.